Welcome back to another episode of the Working Mama podcast, the place where we talk honestly about the real challenges and wins of juggling career and motherhood. Today, I'm joined by the incredible Emma McLean, an executive coach, speaker, and the founder of Works for Everyone. She's also the host of How to Smash the Motherhood Penalty podcast. Emma has dedicated her career to supporting working parents throughout the transition back to work. And today she's unpacking something we don't talk about enough, which is the motherhood penalty. From the 55% pay gap mothers experience over 10 years to the hidden mental load of school holidays and why flexibility is often a trap, Emma shares both the hard truths and the practical ways we can change the system for ourselves, our families, and future generations. This is just an awesome episode. I absolutely loved my chat with Emma. So many gems of gold, such a great chat. And this conversation is certainly going to challenge the way that you think about work, caregiving, and equality, both at home and also in the workplace. But it will also give you hope and hopefully some strategies you can take into your own life. So let's get into it. And also, just quickly, if you really enjoy this episode, please forward it through to a friend, a fellow working mum. And also, if you could leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, that would be greatly appreciated to help get this episode into more ears. Let's get into it. Welcome, Emma. Welcome to the Working Mama podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. I have to say, I'm really looking forward to today's chat. So for everyone that doesn't know you, who are you? What's your background and how did you end up to where you are today?
Thank you very much, Karina. I am delighted to be here. My name is Emma McLean. I am coming to you all the way from New Zealand, Auckland. So you'll all have to put up with my Kiwi accent. I'm not going to apologise for it though.
We've had a few Kiwis on the show, so a couple of
Good.
times.
Excellent. We're all friends. I'm a mum of 3. My kids are all quite old now. I've got a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And I guess my first career was I worked in corporate strategy roles in New Zealand and in the UK. But when I became a mum, I really started to see the world through a different lens. And particularly amongst my colleagues, particularly women, as they became mums, I just started to see this trend that slowly and surely they would off-ramp themselves out of work or into a more junior role or into no people leadership. And look, I get it. Working and having a family is hard, right? And you know that. But I was kind of deeply fatigued, which is a phrase I stole from Julia Gillard, that we kind of went on and we wrung our hands around why there's no woman at the top. But we didn't put a care wrap around mums in particular in the middle of their careers. So I wanted to be that care wrap. So here I am. I'm an enormous hug, basically. And I retrained to become an executive coach in 2018, set up my business. It's called Works for Everyone. And I'm basically a professional development business that partners with large businesses to help welcome their employees back from parental leave. And I do that through self-leadership programs that help build their confidence. And maybe, for example, if you're a secondary carer, maybe you're a dad, I run programs to help make space for being a dad. I do executive coaching, keynote speaking, and I've got my own podcast, How to Smash the Motherhood Penalty, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about. And the other thing you need to know about me is I'm a Swiftie.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm assuming you know what that term means, Karina.
Of course I do. Yes. Yes. I've got 2 young boys and they even know what a Swiftie is.
I actually came to Melbourne last year. I was at Melbourne Night 2 in March last year, or February, I think, and with my daughter who was 15. Not going to lie, best weekend of my life. 100,000 people at the MCG, loved it.
Oh, fantastic. I'm sure there's a whole podcast we could do around something.
What Taylor Swift could teach us about motherhood, working motherhood.
And I'm sure she'll teach us a lot. I'm sure one day she'll be a mum and I'm sure the rest of the world will no doubt have an opinion according to her.
Totally.
around being a mum. So yes, thank you so much for that. There is so much that you do around working parents and things like that. Before we get into it, where are we at in 2025, the lay of the land, I guess, for working parents? So I guess we've got a bit of a line in the sand. What are you seeing? I guess some of the challenges, but also some of the things that you think are working, and then we can then move on from there. Like what's the scene
Yeah,
like at the moment?
it's a good question. Look, I think, and many people have talked about this, but if there have been any silver linings to COVID, it did tell us that, we can actually work from home, right? Now, I know that's being wound back, but it did, I remember prior to COVID when I was in the workforce, when you said you were working from home, you used to do it in quotes, like I'm working from home,
Yeah.
like it was code for I'm doing the laundry or something like that.
I'm
And
watching Netflix.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm watching I'm just lolling around. And so, I think that's changed now. And I think that's a good thing. And I think we need to be careful about it as well, because what I've observed in my work, and I work with mums and dads, is that typically if we do have people that are working from home or they've been allowed to have flexibility in terms of their location or their hours, it is still the mums doing it. And, actually, there is a theory called the flexibility paradox. And that is flexibility, is job flexibility actually a trap? And I know it's a bit of an ironic thing because flexible working is great, but we do need to consider if it's only one parent taking it up. And I hear a lot from my clients, again, if they're in heterosexual relationships, if they are partnered, my mums will say, oh, it just makes sense for me to do the pickups and the drop-offs because my husband's job is just not flexible. And I just really would want to get curious about this not flexible
What
thing.
actually determines not flexible?
Yeah, because what if a woman had that job?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, so I think that for me, the state of the nation is that, yes, we have flexibility, but I don't think it's the answer. And it's definitely not the answer if only one gender does it, because it still really enables you. It still means that we've got these gendered caregiving norms, and that's what we need to smash, really. And so for me, that's what I think we still need to work on, is how might both mums and dads take up flexibility, take up reduced hour roles, demand reduced hour roles for certain points of our careers to enable us to fulfill our caregiving requirements. Because to your point, we're not wanting 32-hour-a-week roles so we can loll around and watch Netflix. Like, there's a lot of work at home keeping a family operational. And I think really the key thing that has not changed in my experience and needs to is that mums have got the memo, they can break into the boardroom. But dads haven't got the memo, they can break into the home.
That is so well put. That we're told, and there's a lot of the focus on women around changing the discussion. But when you think about it, 50% of population, we already know what needs to change. And exactly to your point, we know that we need the dads and also then the acceptance from a corporate perspective for dads to leave early, to have those discussions with their employers and things like that. And there's so much in Australia at the moment around caregiving and the responsibility. And it's been really interesting to see the conversation has been very much around the women. And you do not see dads advocating around childcare and things like that. They're not the ones advocating for it. It is the mums and the women, I guess, because of the patriarchal systems and also what we're told as society, right? You're a female, you're the mother, you need to then manage the caregiving arrangements, when really at the end of the day, it's both parents that need to play that role. And it'd be great for a dad to be standing up and to, the big corporates in Australia of saying, no, don't do this. It'd be great to see a dad.
Well, that's where you will get power shifts, because we can't keep advocating for it by ourselves because it's not working.
No.
That's it, all right? So, yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like, where are the dads? Like, school holidays. So if you have children that go to school, you'll be familiar with school holidays and how they're not a holiday, and how you have to find 12 weeks of leave out of the normal 4 that you get, or the 5. And I'm very, very deliberate about language in my work, and I talk a lot about parents. I will talk about mums when they're mum-specific issues and dads, but I put a post up on LinkedIn, and I know it is LinkedIn and that, but it was about school holidays, and it was kind of like, how do we get through school holidays, and what are the options, and what do you do, and da, 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 da. Like, of the 160 people that liked the post, there was 2 guys or something.
Yeah.
And this is my thing, is that we can't be the only ones talking about school holidays. And school holidays, actually, if you are partnered and you're in a heterosexual relationship, it's a great one for your partner to own, because school holidays are complicated. They're not just about taking the kid to the program on the Monday morning. They're about 7 weeks before thinking, what are we going to do?
Yeah. Who's got them? What's going on?
It's the cognitive load of where are they going to go? How much money? Do we have the budget for that? And then as your kids get older, they complain about what they're doing as well. So you have to have negotiation skills. And, we laugh, but it's very stressful. And so I always say to my dads, that's a really good thing for them to own end to end, not just the dropping, but the planning, the conception, the negotiating, the budgeting. And it's a great thing to own, because I'll tell you what, that's a big job, school holidays, organizing what we're doing in them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much in that as well. And now something that you're really passionate, and obviously you've got a podcast around, is the motherhood penalty. So obviously we're talking a lot around, dad stepping up as well. But obviously at the moment there is a bit of a penalty that really happens for women. And we know this even statistically, men and women, okay, yes, they do start generally behind the pay even from a very young age. But even the workplace, they'll graduate, they'll generally do level pecking. Once they become a mum, we know that generally they're not always put back on the same level pecking when they return back in from maternity leave. And we've heard this term that gets bandied around called the motherhood penalty, which then I know has really then ripple effects for the rest of their careers as well.
Slash life,
mother, the mental load and everything else as well. What is your definition of the motherhood penalty?
Yeah, good question, I think, Karina, because it is bandied around a bit. And so I will be really clear, and I'll use some numbers, and they're actually Australian Federal Treasury numbers, which I got, and I'm going to pronounce this terribly wrong, there's an institute in Australia called the Grattan Institute.
You got it correct, yes.
Oh, God, thank God. Yes, get worried when I don't say things. Anyway, about a year and a half ago, they published some numbers, which was in the Australian Financial Review, around the motherhood penalty. And they found that if you were in a heterosexual couple and you were both pretty much the same salary level when you became parents, they tracked your salary, both of your salaries, over 10 years. Now, over 10 years, because, if you've grown and birthed a baby and fed a baby, you can understand that your salary will be impacted by, 6 months, and maybe a year, maybe 2 years. But what they found is that over 10 years, a mother's salary is negatively impacted by up to 55%.
That's huge.
55, it's huge. It's huge.
And obviously that's salary, but there's also superannuation implications.
This is what I mean. So that's then your retirement savings are impacted. So the way that I talk about the penalty, it's a financial penalty. There are a lot of other penalties that contribute to this financial penalty. But, the World Economic Forum actually says that up to 80% of the pay gap can be explained through the motherhood penalty. So it is actually a real thing. And not only is a mum's salary impacted by up to 55% over 10 years, basically never recovers, a dad's salary actually goes up.
I know. I hate that statistic. It just always surprises me.
The fatherhood bonus. And, that's for a number of, and I'll go through why we have the motherhood penalty, because this is not a beat up on mums and dads, okay? Because mums and dads are doing the best they can, but we are all working in a system that doesn't value caregiving. And there's 4 key reasons why we have a motherhood penalty. Number one, and I can only really speak from New Zealand perspective on this, paid parental leave from a government perspective is only available for one caregiver, right?
And at one time.
And at one time. And, you know, as we talked about before we started, Karina, what happens in those first days sets up a dynamic for your whole life, right? It sets up a dynamic of who's leading, who's supporting. And we actually don't need leads and supports in a relationship. We need equals. Like, what's your partner's called? It's a partner, right? And so when we only have paid parental leave for one partner, but also we introduce terminology like primary carer, secondary carer. So from day dot, we are ranking parents. I actually interviewed on my podcast Norma Barrett, who's a researcher from Deakin University, and she studied this about passenger parenting. And she said, you know, like when we rank parents from day dot, if that secondary parent is a dad, they just feel invisible.
Yeah, like, you take the back seat. What do you know about possibly being a parent? Yeah.
Literally. And so this is why the motherhood penalty occurs, because of the system we are working in. The second reason why we have a motherhood penalty, and I know there has just been so many awful things happening with childcare in Australia right now. But childcare, we are one of the most, and I think Australia as well, most expensive places in the world to get childcare. Not only that, it's not convenient and it's often not accessible. What do shift workers do for childcare?
Yeah.
What do you do if you get an opportunity to do 3 hours of work on a Monday? Where do you ring for spontaneous childcare? You know, like it hasn't moved with the times. It's expensive. Up to 35% of your take-home salary, if you have 2 kids, is consumed by childcare costs.
Yeah.
That's a reason why someone doesn't go back to work. Now, it shouldn't be, and we should be comparing it over a family's salary, but
so often I hear, oh no, I'm only going back to work just to pay for childcare fees. And I'm like, that really breaks my heart, because so many times I'm like, but do you do the same thing with like your grocery bill, or I'm working just to pay a mortgage? No, you don't look at it that way. But when you think about, well, we're returning back into work. If I wasn't working, I would be then having, you know, the full-time caregiving. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's both parents. But yeah, that's just me in my soapbox.
No, get on that soapbox, I say. Because the reason why I do this work is I get, as I said, why it's easy to go, well, it's not worth me going back. And that's cool if your relationship stays together. But if there is a death or a divorce, that is financially devastating for a person who may not have worked for 5 years, 10 years. Not because they're not brilliant, but because your confidence will be so low, it's really hard for you to get back into your career, which is where you'll earn the most money.
Yeah.
And basically your entire life will change. And, you know, divorce is brutal for women, and I want them to have options. And so if you can keep in the workforce somehow, you are giving yourself options, because while you perform the unpaid work of running a family, your partner is furthering their career and building long-term financial stability. And that's cool if you stay together. But we know that not everyone does. Like, we need to talk about this, you know? And that's another reason where the motherhood penalty shows up in full force. Full force. So that's just a warning for everyone up there. We don't start relationships for them to end, but it's a thing to think about.
Yeah.
And thirdly, why it exists is that there are no senior part-time roles. So reason why we had a 55% salary decrease over 10 years is not because we haven't gone back. We have gone back. But if we say, look, we need a 20-hour-a-week role because we've got 3 kids and we need to put them for school, or we need a 32-hour week, people don't know what to do with that. And so they give you a junior job. I had a client who was an electrical engineer, wanted 32 hours a week. They didn't know what to do with her, so they got her folding T-shirts. Yeah, there's lots of stories like this. And you're on reduced salary for that, right? But also you're vulnerable. So you don't complain. You don't ask too much about it.
Did you think, oh, I'm grateful that I've got a role rather than being made redundant? You think, I'm so grateful they had me back, but no. Yes. They should be the ones grateful for that you're coming back.
Exactly. I mean, it's, as you say, it's gratefulitis, and we need to stamp it out. It's an epidemic because, even when you do return if you came back on 4 days a week, we all know that often you are doing 5 days worth of outcomes and getting paid 80% of the salary. And you're in overwhelm because you're working on Sunday night or you're turning on your laptop when the kids have gone to bed at 8 o'clock and you are in seething resentment as a base level state. And that is not a good time. And again, that is why women come out, because we are working in a system that doesn't know how to do reduced hour jobs. We don't craft them. We don't design them. We don't advertise them. We kind of let people do it. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to win. And then lastly, and I know every family is different, but globally, whatever stats you look at, even though men are doing more than they have ever done from a mental load and a physical load perspective, women continue to do the lion's share of the work at home. And you can tell yourself any story you like about why that's okay in your relationship, but it is restricting your ability to take on paid work. And I know that there's a capitalist thing to say, but money makes a difference in this society. And in New Zealand, one of the fastest growing groups of people in poverty are women over 60.
Yeah, we've
And
got in
that-
Australia women over
And
55.
that breaks my heart because I'm telling you right now, they have done a lot of unpaid work over their lifetime. And now what have they got?
It's pretty frightening when you start to, I guess, put it all together like that into four key areas. And I know that, definitely number 3 of what you were mentioning. I work a 4-day-a-week corporate role. I sit on the executive team, and I'm a unique one that I'm only there because I've actually worked for the company for such a long time that when I took on a new position, it was actually technically a full-time position, but I was like, look, can I do it in 4? I've probably got the outputs of 5 over and above, but what am I getting paid? Because also it's a personal choice. I'm choosing to then have 1 day of caregiving with my 4-year-old before he goes off to school. And so many people, it's amazing. They're going, oh, you're so lucky to have a day off. And I'm going, you don't realize I come back to work on a Tuesday for a break. The hardest day of the week is my Mondays when I have to do life admin, run around after kids. That's the hardest day of the week.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I think this is a complexity. This is a complexity that we want to have time with our children, right? We want to have this day, and actually, it's not actually unicorns and rainbows all day, right? And we're not getting paid for it, and we've got all these jobs to do, and it can actually drive a whole lot of questions in mums' minds around what am I doing this for? Like, and this is, and again, I just say to people, if that feels like you, like, be kind to yourself because we as I said, at a baseline here, we live and work in a system that doesn't value caregiving. And we know
It's
this
so hard
to be
because we're
true.
made to feel that the first 5 years are so important. If you're there, you're going to stuff up your kids.
Yep.
But at the same time, you need to go back to work. So I find as well this, and I'm seeing this play out a lot at the moment in Australia, there's this real sort of tassel that's coming in between of caregiving versus work. And I personally look at it of, well, how can I integrate them both? And I've chosen at the moment not to work full time. Yes, I could do it, no dramas, but there's an element of me of like, well, no, I still want that, but also I want to create a lifestyle and a setup for my family that I know that my kids are probably going to need me as well emotionally when they're teenagers. I don't just see it as when they're young ones, but there's so much focus on those first 5 years before they go to school. You've got to be there. And as my kids are getting older, I'm actually noticing they're probably needing me more now, probably emotionally, than when they were younger. They just needed me there more physically. And it's also that transition that it's sort of that catch-22 of I want to do both. I know me personally. But then some people are going, I actually did a poll recently and a lot of people said, look, if I had the chance, I wouldn't actually work. So it's interesting as well, also what notions come from society versus also what you want to do. But as you said before, every family is different. And I think it also comes back to what your personal values are and look, what do you want to do? Because what works for me is going to be different to you and different to the next person.
Yeah. It's complicated, and
It's very
and
complicated.
that's a very good articulation how complicated it is. And I think for a lot of people there is no choice here, which is why I get kind of angry with the whole, if you put your kid in daycare in the first 3 years of their lives, you're kind of destroying them because, like, 80% of people in this world don't have a choice about that.
Mm.
They have to go back to work. And, like and it's brutal. It is absolutely brutal what we are asked to do. And mums and dads need to start being noisy about it. It is absolutely brutal. Being nice, being polite, pretending it's all working, that's not working anymore. So I always say to my clients, find your people, talk to them, be real about how hard this is. Be real about, when your kid is sick and you've both got a very important meeting at work, how you manage that.
Yeah.
Like you have it.
It's going to come. You need to have the discussion. It's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And I think that's also where flexibility can come into it. But also it's that conversation, particularly in those hard moments between the parents of, okay, who's got what meeting? I know my husband and I one time is, oh my goodness. And he goes, look, he's a lawyer. So he's like, I've got a court appearance here. And I'm like, well, I've got an executive meeting. I'm like, right, you do your court appearance. You can't get out of it. 6 months together. And then I'm like, right, I'm over here. So it was funny how in a day we were splitting it. But
Yeah.
it's challenging that, you've got to have those conversations. But I think also, what can we then do? Because obviously some of this comes as well from an organizational perspective. And I think it's also sometimes you feel that pressure. Oh my goodness, I need to show up. I've got to be there. Or you often hear as well, my employer is not very supportive and things as well, I guess, for both parents. What do we need to do, as you're saying, be louder about this? But are you seeing organizations starting to be more supportive and recognizing the caregiving? And I guess flexibility is one way to support that, but also looking at outputs, not just hours as well that people spend in a job.
Yeah, I think definitely looking at outputs is important. I think what I've seen that is good is there definitely is policy changes. So there's quite a few employers in New Zealand, I imagine in Australia as well, who have started including an allowance of days in your package for caregiving. Or do you know what I mean? Like you might get your 5 weeks leave plus you have 5 days caregiving leave that can be taken at short notice or whatever. I think there's more awareness that, to your point about sickness, it's not if, it's when. And so rather than us as an employer being surprised by this, why don't we plan for it? And that's something when I work with people leaders, I always say to them, if you do have parents in your team, it's a really nice proactive conversation to say, hey, I get that baby's going to get sick. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but it will. And I really want you to know that I get that. And I get that it's not a personal, fault on your behalf. But what I need is when you can't come to work, just text me.
Yeah.
Text me the meetings you've got and I'll manage it. And if you can front foot that with your member of staff, that person feels really supported, because when our babies get sick, it's a really scary time. We've all been in the emergency room at midnight with a baby with a rash that we don't know what's going on. And we do not also want to be worried about the 9 a.m. client pitch meeting that only I can give.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
There's a level of anxiety and guilt, I think, that comes with when kids are sick and you're like, oh my God, what are they going to think? And you kind of spiral in those moments.
Yes, you totally spiral. And if your manager, and this is why I've seen a lot of leaders do really well, is front foot into that and go, I know it's going to happen. All I need to keep the business going is bang, bang, bang. So if it happens, you do that. So you kind of put a plan in place before it happens, because you're absolutely right, Karina. People spiral. I had a client ring me once. She was crying and she said to me, Emma, I've been back for 4 weeks. I've already used my entire year sick leave allowance. And now daycare is called and my kid is sick again. Will my manager think I'm lazy? So the pressure we put on ourselves when our children are sick is next level.
Yeah.
It's next level. And
And
I just think the role of the leader in all these situations is really, really important. The second thing I'd say is that I started the New Zealand Part-Time Power List to prove that you can have reduced hour roles at a senior, and that, how do we make those work? I think we have to have collaboration and trust between the manager and the employee. And we have to be a bit innovative around this stuff. We have to just, there will be swings and roundabouts. Like, I think it's tempting to say, I'm doing 32 hours and that's it. But, in your role on a leadership team, I mean, full-time jobs are really 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
So when you try and reduce it to 32, it doesn't work. So it's about trust, it's about collaboration, and it's about open communication.
100%. Yeah. And it's also that conversation between yourself and your manager of, look, this is what's going on, or this is what can I do? And I know at times as well, you can say, look, we'll trial this. What does it look like? Understanding where the organization, I often find it's a bit of give and take from both sides. And also, what does the organization want from a delivery perspective? What do you want? Because if it's all one way, no one's ever, you need something to go to the negotiating table with. So I know when I was negotiating it, they're like, oh, you're going to 5 days? I was like, no. And then my manager was like, look, we'll see how it goes. And she's like, I remember my review last year. She's like, look, it's working for me if it's working for you. So I was like, yeah. And it's also really nice that you get that permission slip. But it's also, but I do some things that people go, I wouldn't do that. For example, on my day off, I will sort of triage an email and go, look, if anything's important, if there was a massive red flag, I would jump on it. But then also I look at it as debits and credits. I'm like, look, if I've done that and I'm walking out of the office at 20 to 5 because I need to catch the 5 o'clock train so I can get home for dinner, I'm like, look, but that's also me mentally going, okay, I've given a little bit here. I'm going to take a little bit here. But it's also, I'm able to regulate that in myself, and I've got the flexibility to do that. I know not every workplace has that.
Yeah.
So it's something as well of a personal ownership, but also then the discussion and the communication, I think, as well, as you say, is really important with your manager.
Yeah. I mean, I love that story and how you do that, because when you talk that back, for me, it's about you've given yourself permission to do this the way that works for you. And that's what I would recommend everyone does, because if it's okay for you to stay across emails on your day that you're not working, do it. But I think when you need to just have a little think is when you're doing stuff that's not okay.
Yeah.
Like if you're being expected to go in on every Saturday or whatever. Yeah. So I think it's, and I think if when I worked part-time, I would of course stay across stuff, because you're professional. I mean, this is my career. I'm not going to let any balls drop, right? And I think that's the thing is, but I think there is just no innovation. Like why, for example, if you're working 4 days, and I don't know if you're getting paid 80%, but why are we not getting paid 100% when there could be someone else? I mean, I don't think, and I think if men in large numbers do this kind of work, there would be different changes. Do you know what I mean? I think it's because women, and we suffer from grateful-itis, that we don't kind of ask for stuff. I mean, most people on 4 days are delivering the full FTE of that job. So.
Yeah. And I guess also it's just in the father approach, it's what you say around the value of caregiving. And I think if the value of caregiving was rated higher, and then, if you've got more men willing to do it, then it would just definitely change the game and that as well. What are you seeing then, the impact of the motherhood penalty on women and mothers? There's obviously a financial sense, but what about, I guess, the mental side of things and the confidence and the, I guess the guilt element of, well, because that often comes into it of, oh, I'm only working part-time and, oh, that'll be the guy's job. Or even the thought process, oh, my husband's the main breadwinner, I don't need to worry about it as much. And just that mental side of things, I guess, of how women perceive and value themselves. When if anyone else looks at them, you probably feel like shaking them and saying, you're amazing, but they don't see that themselves. Instead, they're actually probably, no doubt, impounding their own, not impounding is probably the right word, but they're probably enabling that penalty from a mental perspective as well.
Yeah, again, it's complicated, isn't it? And I think if you're listening to this and it feels like you, then you just have to be really kind to yourself because this stuff is hard. And I think for me, what's the impact of the motherhood penalty, other than financial and as you discussed, like confidence and guilt? For me, it's often mums can be in a constant state of overwhelm. And like one of my clients described it as being in a constant snowstorm. And when you are in that state, you don't even know how to get out of it.
And it feels like it's never ending.
And it feels like it's never ending. You can't see clearly through it. Like in a way, when we had COVID and we had all the lockdowns, a lot of my clients commented to me that the snow settled. Because we didn't have this I'm just going to drop Henry to hockey and I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that and all that. You were all at home.
Yeah.
There were no distractions and the snow settled and you could kind of see what was going on. And I think that's what I want for my parents that are in these states of overwhelm, because if you are suffering in confidence, you don't know where to start and you start believing it. And so because you go, yeah, I am kind of pathetic. Like what would you do with someone who works 3 days a week? And, I don't really care about my career anymore, even though, I had a first class honors degree and I worked for 15 years in senior leadership roles. I mean, you start believing that. And, you start thinking, I'm just going to get a job at the school and, work in a resource room where I can refill sellotape dispensers because at least I'll be there, when the kids get out of the class. And it's like, for me, you need to invest in yourself and you need to craft some time out for yourself just to hear your inner GPS again. Because I think a lot of mums lose their inner GPS, their inner compass, because we just wallpaper over with so many other people's needs. And again, it comes right from the start. If you have grown and birthed a baby, you suddenly have this little person that's 24/7 dependent on you.
Yes.
And that's the first time that's happened in our lives, really.
Yeah.
We feed it and everything. When you think about if you have, grown, birthed and fed a baby, what an amazing act that is and why we are not running the world because of it.
Yeah. There'd be less wars, as we know.
Oh, totally. Yes. But I think, for me, the motherhood penalty can show up as confidence, guilt, but it evidences itself as overwhelm and just always having a to-do list. And almost your partner, if you are partnered, looking at you helplessly because they want to help. They can see what's going on. But in fact, you don't need help, by the way. You need someone who's going to own stuff. You do not need to write someone a list because that is worse. But it's just, for me, it's about you taking responsibility of yourself, carving time out, starting to hear your inner voice again. And starting from there, change is an inside job, and I think we just lose ourselves. We can lose our inner GPS, and that's what you've got to reactivate. And once you can reactivate that, I think everything else starts reorientating in a good way.
Yeah, the snowstorm starts to go and to calm down. But it's so much there. If someone is there and just trying to find their inner GPS again, I know we could probably do a whole podcast episode around this, but what are just some quick ways? And I do know of some people that are really in this state at the moment.
Yeah.
What could they do where to start?
Yeah. I think, try doing different things. Often our days are full, right? But try different things. Like if you drive to work, get a bus to work. If you always go and get your coffee from the same barista every morning, go to a different one. If you do go for a half an hour walk, choose a different route. And I would say if you are going for walks, don't take headphones. Just go with your mind. Because I think if we stay on the guinea pig wheel of life, we never have new ideas. And you know what I mean? So I find when you disrupt your guinea pig wheel, and again, I found this in COVID, because there were so many people walking around where I live. Right at the start, everyone was scared of getting it. So then you didn't really want to see people you knew. So I was like, well, I can't walk the same route because there's hundreds of families walking up this road, this big mountain we live near. So I went on a different route. And Karina, I had different ideas.
Wow.
I started, it actually blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this actually works. And it's a bit like, have you ever like been to a conference for work, or they've sent you on some training course, and you come back and you're like, well, that conference was pretty shit, but actually this thought occurred to me. Like you just need to disrupt your normal pattern, and that might start you figuring out what you want, figuring out, what do I want? Because actually, to have better conversations with our manager, with our partner, with our families, we need to first figure out what we're going to ask for in that conversation. Do you know what I mean?
You can't say, I want better flexibility and just go demanding, I want this. And you're like, well, no, what does that look like? And and also, if you're a manager, typically, my experience, the manager's not going to want, like, they don't know what you want.
Yeah.
If you can't actually name and articulate what is it that you want, you're like, right, I want to work 4 days a week. I want to start, finish early. I want to work hybrid and things like that. Because when we talk about flexibility and working arrangements and things like that, there's so many different options. You can't just say, I want to work flexibility. Like, that can mean so many things. But if you say, I want to work these hours, these days, this is where I'm going to work, you put it on the table and you show, okay, this is what the organizational needs. This is what and then they're like, oh, wow, you've thought about everything.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to say no to.
Yeah. But, because to your point, right, hope is not a strategy, right? You can't hope they're going to know what you want. And particularly we do that when we don't even know what we want. And so that's what I'm saying is spend the time and like it might be that, again, we were talking before, but, from a home perspective, from a overwhelm perspective, you might like, well, actually, I need 3 hours every weekend where there's no one in the house. Like I needed that. Like I just felt quite touched out. I didn't want people touching me, asking me where the scissors are.
I had that when my children were really young and I was breastfeeding. I'm like, I don't need so much closeness. I just need 5 minutes, not someone.
Everyone leave me alone. Love ya. And could you leave me alone? Yeah. And so it's being able to, and, I think a lot of us feel really guilty for asking time by ourselves because we're like, well, does that mean I don't love my children or my partner or whatever? But I called it decompression time. I needed 3 hours in the house on a Sunday morning. I could make a lasagna, put on a podcast, sort through the kids' clothes that, still had 6-month-old stretch and grows, even though they're actually 12. Yeah. Stuff you just don't get around to doing. Because for me, then I could start the week kind of reset.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was going from chaos to chaos, but I didn't know what I needed until I really was like, what do I need to make this work? I need time by myself. And I think actually being able to have really clear conversations with your partners about that is really important. One thing I notice with several clients is they'll say to their partner, oh, I'm going to go and have coffee with blah, blah. And the partner will go, oh, take the baby with you. Because they would love to see the baby. And you're like, and it's really hard for you to say, oh, no, I don't want to take the baby. I just want to go by myself. Because you put so many like beliefs around what a mum is. And the dad's trying to force the baby onto you, mainly because he's never looked after 2 kids before and he doesn't know how he's going to do it. But I think that's why you need to really have better conversations with your partner. Because I believe in dads. I believe they have so much more in their life to gain by being an active caregiver. But we will need to lean in to some crunchy, awkward conversations.
And also acceptance that something's going to be done a different way and things like that, that there's so much that, as what you were saying earlier, that we think that we need to hold on to.
Yes.
But I think also as women, and I know this might be a little bit controversial, we've also got to be accepting to let some things go, that we, as much as we think we need to do it all, we actually don't. And it's okay to get other people to actually support us. And being number one person is actually then our partner, if you're in a relationship, of saying, you can do this. You can think about that. I'm not going to think about the school holidays. You can
Yeah.
manage that.
Yeah.
And actually have that acceptance, which is hard initially to do because you're like, oh my God, they're going to do it differently to me. And you might just sit there going, I've told them to do this and I'm getting really uncomfortable. It's making me really agitated. They're not doing it the way that I would do it. But there's also then got to be an acceptance that it's going to be done differently, but at least it's going to be done.
Yeah, totally. So, and again, these are the conversations we need to lean into. And I think be real with yourself about this stuff though. Like if there are some things that a lot of us have some quite non-negotiables about how things are done, right? For example, I don't really care what my kids eat. Some people do, right? What I do care about is at the end of the day, the kitchen is clean, right? And when I mean clean, nothing on the surface, no pots on the stove, nothing drying on a drying board. Now, if I pretend I don't care about that because he does it differently and there are pots on the stove, that if I'm pretending to myself that I don't care, that's not going to end out well. So I think that's why you need to, if there are some things that are really important to you, like a client said to me, oh, I know it's not important, Emma, but I get a bit sad when I pick my girls up from daycare and my husband has dropped them off in the morning and they have socks on that don't match. Okay, it's this little tiny thing, right? She's like, I know it's embarrassing that I'm telling you this, and I'm like, well, you know what? It's not embarrassing. It's important to you.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where I mean, like, how do you unlock your inner GPS? You start believing in yourself. You start saying, that's not silly that I want the kids to have socks that match. I need to talk to the person that we love the most, say, honey, can you put socks on that match the girls or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like when we discount our needs, I think that has a really bad message to our self-esteem. So I get there are things that we can leave. Like I had one of my kids ring me, and again, when they're older, it doesn't matter, but I was away for the night and he said to me, Mum, when are you coming home? Like he was 9 or something. And I said, I'm not coming home. Dad's looking after you tonight. And he goes, no, Mum, you need to come home because Dad's just given us dinner and he's given us sandwiches and sandwiches aren't dinner. And I said, oh, baby, dads do things differently. See you. And that's, I think, know what you can let go and know what you can't, because, you know, if you've been the lead caregiver for 3 children, you know what works in a routine. And I think when someone comes in and doesn't follow that, you need to be careful about that, because there's a lot of other things going on. Because for me, that's almost a lack of respect, because that was my job and I learned how to do it. And so that's why I'm saying this stuff is hard between mums and dads, and you've got to sit in this mess. You've got to talk about it.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, and for all parents, I know we can keep talking on so many topics, but I know that just quickly as well, some of this also in these conversations should need to start really early on, but also in the return and the transition back into work. Obviously, that's also comes into the motherhood penalty as well. Are there some tips and things that you would say to women to, I guess, address these topics as they're re-entering back in after parental leave, or even fathers as well if they've taken leave, just to help with that transition back? So I guess they can try and minimize that penalty as much as possible.
Yeah, I think if you do nothing else, I think when you are transitioning back to work, whether you're a mum or a dad, and look, by the way, if you are parenting alone, this load is next level hard, okay? And I want to acknowledge that. And I have actually got a few episodes on my podcast where I talk to single parents, and it's really hard, and I'm sure you have as well. But if you take one thing away, I think you have a conversation with your partner around, honey, now that we're both back at work, how will our family work? What is our weekly routine? Who owns what? When is your exercise? When is my exercise? I think the biggest impact you can have to smooth your transition back to work is what's happening at home. Because if you are doing everything, work is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
It just is. So I think if you do one thing, it's about sitting down with a blank piece of paper, writing Monday to Sunday across the top, having 7 columns, writing in everything that happens in your family every week, putting owners against them, and starting doing it. Because what drives overwhelm is decision fatigue. And if you have to reinvent your week every week, that's a lot. But if you can kind of say, look, unless there's a major change, you own drop-offs on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And when you know that, you could leave early if you wanted, right? You could go to the gym and define what own drop-off means. Like for a lot of my clients, own drop-off means clean the high chair so it's not got dried up porridge all on it when you get home and it's now bricks. Pack the daycare bags, clean the kitchen, whatever. You have to be specific about what these things mean, because if someone's on pickup and they come home to a bomb site, they might not like that. Do you know what I mean? But this is what I lean into. I said, how? And so this is not, what are you going to do? What am I going to do? Because it cannot turn into Olympics of suffering. This is how, when we are now both at work in a system that doesn't value caregiving, how will our family work, honey? And write stuff down and then have weekly check-ins on it. And again, I know that sounds boring, but work is work wherever it's happening. And when we're at work, we have a lot of structure, don't we, about
We
work?
do.
So we need the same structure at home. And I know that sounds really boring, but structure gives you freedom. Because then you've got clear roles and responsibilities. And that's what we need. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, last question. If you could wave a magic wand, particularly from a workplace and relating to as well the motherhood penalty, what would it be?
I think, well, it would be paid parental leave for both parents, mandatory, 6 months each, at least. I mean, magic wand. We never have to work. Can we say that, Karina?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I don't, it's not necessarily the silver bullet, but I think when dads can experience being a sole caregiver at home with a baby and a toddler, with 3 kids, I think, we actually have to experience stuff firsthand to really understand it sometimes. And I think also it just expands what a dad can get from his life if he is not just the fun dad who gets in the pool on Saturday for swimming lessons, but also knows how to get tomato sauce out of a white broad rayon glaze dress.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I would wish that for them, because, if we want women to step into their power in the world, and this is something Eve Rodsky from Fair Play says, we need men to step into their power at home.
Yeah.
And I really believe in that. And KPMG in New Zealand has recently introduced 18 weeks paid parental leave for both parents in their firm. So if you're a primary carer or a secondary carer, which I hate those words, anyway, 43% of dads have taken that 18 weeks, right, of full pay. And I think that's epic, because currently the paid parental leave take up in New Zealand for government paid parental leave for one carer is like 1% dads do it.
That's crazy.
And I just think if we can get dads involved as active caregivers, we change the entire family dynamics from the start. They will become more vocal at work around what they need. They will become better leaders at work because they know what the demands are. They will ask for system change. Like, women can't do this alone anymore. We need men to link arms with us, because this will be better for everyone. Everyone wins in these scenarios. There's no downside.
I agree. Yeah, it's a win-win. And I love the analogy that you say around the linking arms. It's not us or them in terms of men or women in leadership. We need to work on this, and we need the male allies to come to the table and have the conversations and take the parental leave, because we know the ones that do take the parental leave, they come back actually as better leaders, more emotionally attuned and things like that, because we know, and I know we could talk about this so much more, but the skills that you gain during those caregiving opportunities that then translate to actually then going back in the workplace, and that people will say, yeah, I'd actually look at it and go, yeah, working parents, you get it. You
Mm,
understand and you're actually able to regulate, no doubt, yourself a bit better because
mm,
of your understanding of circumstances and things like that. So there's certainly a
mm,
lot of skills that you gain, not necessarily probably valued by all workplaces, but certainly
mm.
are out there. I know, Emma, we could chat all day. Just quickly, how do you fill your cup?
Well, obviously I'm a Swiftie. And I mean, if you for 3.5 hours in sequins and friendship bracelets, yelling the songs for 3.5, that's a good way to fill my cup. I I love walking. So every day I live very close to a big mountain or a manga, which is what they say in the Maori language. And today, like I walked up the top of the mountain, I saw the sunrise, and you realize that today is another day and we got another day. And I'm really grateful for that. And I can say that because my kids are not small anymore. And, when you have young kids, boy, it's hard to get exercise in, but I really appreciate it. And it's really where I do my best thinking. So, walking, Taylor Swift, and margaritas, I'd say.
Amazing, amazing. Love it. Now, how can people find out about you and the work that you do?
Well, I'm on Instagram, it's Works for Everyone, and I often post working parent hints and tips. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Emma McLean, and I do have a website, worksforeveryone.co.nz. And on Spotify and Apple and on YouTube, I am How to Smash the Motherhood Penalty is my podcast. Or just, send me a message on Instagram or stop me at the supermarket when I'm buying my, eggs and broccoli and stuff like that, and give me a good recipe for broccoli. That would be great.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this just wide ranging and inspiring
Yeah.
chat. I know that we could keep talking on all things working mums. So, really appreciate your time. Greatly appreciated.
You're welcome.